By now, I'm pretty sure that all of you guys will have heard that this fella here, Ruben Amorim, will be taking charge of Manchester United pretty darn soon. I'm also pretty sure that you will have heard certain buzzwords, the 3-4-3 formation, the double pivot, wing-backs, inside forwards. But what does all of this actually mean? How do each of those positions actually profile in an Amorim system? And do Manchester United have the right players to play those roles? Well, today we're going to figure that out, so subscribe to the channel and let's take a look. So we're going to do this in what I feel is a pretty logical order. Let's start off with the goalkeeper. What does Ruben Amorim want from his goalkeeper on the ball? Well, to be honest, he's a modern day manager. He wants a modern day goalkeeper. Someone that can play with the ball at their feet. Preferably with both feet, the left foot and the right foot. But the most important thing here is passing range. Not just passing ability, passing range. Amorim will want a goalkeeper that can do a little bit of everything. That will involve playing it short out to the centre-backs, breaking the lines into midfield, clipping balls out wide to the wing-backs, but also going more direct, sometimes in behind for one of the inside forwards to run onto, or sometimes going long for the striker to hold up with his chest. The passing range is key here, so Amorim will absolutely want a goalkeeper that is calm on the ball, composed under pressure, and has a brilliant passing range. Do Manchester United have that? Of course we do. We've got Andre Onana. Perfect. Next up, we've got the central centre-back position. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit more complicated, but let's start off with the basics. What does he want from a central centre-back? Physicality. He wants someone who can dominate his duels. That's what everyone wants from their central centre-back in this sort of system. Ruben Amorim is no different. This defender won't necessarily be required to cover large spaces out wide. More of the focus will be in the middle, often battles with a striker. We need a physical player in this position. But how about on the ball? Because this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. You see, we just spoke about the goalkeeper being a ball player, and Amorim will use that, often splitting two of his centre-backs either side of the goalkeeper. Sometimes, emphasis on sometimes, this requires that the central centre-back then actually moves into midfield. Now, typically, we would assume that this player therefore has to be incredibly technical, and this is why a lot of people are calling for Lisandro Martinez in this position. Because normally when a team do this, they will actually ask the centre-back to receive on the turn, try and play past players, and actually move the ball forward, a bit like John Stones for Manchester City or Saliba at times for Arsenal. However, Amorim will ask something a little bit different. He won't want his player to always be playing on the turn in these positions. Instead, we're looking more at bounce passes. So this will be the goalkeeper going into the centre-back popping the ball off to the other centre-back. Or it could be a centre-back into the centre-back who's actually in midfield. Told you it's complicated. And then he's going to play the ball wide. So does this player need to be technical on the ball? Absolutely. Does this player need to be calm and composed? Preferably, yes. But I don't know that we need elite technical quality because I think the job is actually fairly basic. So in my opinion, Manchester United have a few players that could play this role. Let me know who you think is best in the comments down below. Next up, we have the two wider centre-back positions, the left centre-back and the right centre-back. And this is where suddenly we are looking for elite quality on the ball. Amorim puts a massive focus on his wider centre-backs being comfortable in possession, but not just comfortable, actually progressive. This will involve long-range passing ability. Ruben Amorim loves a centre-back that can pick the ball up here and ping it out to the other side, preferably to a wing-back, which we'll come on to a little bit later on. But this is important actually from both sides of the pitch. The ability to switch it, to go long, to move the opposition from side to side. However, Amorim will also want more of the intricate details as well. The harder passes, the passes which are a little bit more difficult to play. Those are the passes in between the lines. You see, normally when we see wide centre-backs in this sort of system, there is a big emphasis on carrying the ball forward and then feeding the ball down the line to a wing-back. And we will absolutely see that on occasion. However, you will notice these two arrows I have on the centre-backs. Amorim also wants his centre-backs to play infield, inside the opposition's press. So these players will be situated outside of the block, but they want the centre-backs to play into the block, playing into these positions. So incisive passing will be key. The likes of Inacio have done this incredibly well for Sporting Lisbon. I also think that Amorim will want, preferably, a left footer on the left and a right footer on the right-hand side. In terms of the left, Luke Shaw and Lisandro Martinez probably look like the two best options. On the right, again, I think we've got a few certainly in possession. Yoro could do this job. Harry Maguire is quite incisive with his passing, although perhaps concerns defensively. I think United have a few options here. These players need to be aggressive, but the on-the-ball ability is really key. As we move into the deeper midfield position, things become a little bit more basic and traditional once again. This is your typical ball-winning midfielder. It's been João Palhinha in the past, it has been Manu Ugarte, and it's also been Hjulmand over the past couple of seasons. This is a player that does a lot of the dirty work for the team. They are not often required necessarily to cover large spaces, but they have got to buzz about between players and make a lot of tackles and put out a lot of fires. In terms of what they do on the ball, I feel it's fairly basic. I wouldn't describe this as a high volume midfielder, but instead someone that will of course be an option because they are part of the deep foundation, but the passing game for them is fairly simple. A few long passes here and there where possible, but generally speaking it will be fairly basic passing, sideways to the other midfielder, occasionally forward in between the lines, and of course backwards to the centre backs as well. This is not the most progressive player in the team. This is a fairly safe player who keeps things ticking over when he gets the ball without ever really dominating the game in possession. Ugarte, he done it at Sporting, probably looks like the perfect player for this sort of role, but also someone like Casemiro as well, because Casemiro can get the ball forward from these positions. He's not a high volume midfielder, so he could tick some boxes. This therefore means that the other midfielder is actually a little bit more advanced, and often this player will be situated on the left hand side of the double pivot. This player is the linking player for the team, if you like, the player that is given the freedom and the opportunity to move a little bit further forward. But importantly, they do still need to be able to play in the deeper phases. Matheus Nunes done a brilliant job here a few seasons ago. He would drop deep, he would get on the ball, he would help his team in the first phase, but then also have the ability to carry the ball forward. And I think that's quite important in this system, ball carrying ability. We are not necessarily looking, again really, for a high volume passer. We don't really need that in this particular system. We are looking for that linking player. So of course passing ability is important, this is top level football. Combination play will be key with quick, short, sharp passing. But more importantly for me I think, is the ability to carry over a few yards, to move through these spaces with the ball. And I think Kobbie Mainoo profiles incredibly nicely for this sort of position. I also think Mason Mount would do a good job here as well, particularly because of the fact that defensively a lot of work is required. These players do have to cover quite a lot of ground to cover their front three, so we have a couple of players that could play this role. I'm not sure who's best, I'd probably lean towards Kobbie. Next up, it is time for the big talking point of the side. It is, of course, the two wingbacks. Everybody wants to know, what does Amorim use in these positions? What types of players? And do Manchester United have the players to perform these roles? And to be honest, this is the most difficult section to talk about. Reason being, Amorim doesn't have a set wingback pattern. A lot of people want to know, is it a fullback on both sides? Is it a fullback and a winger? Are these players left-footed on the left or right-footed on the left? And the same for the other side of the pitch as well. Truthfully, it can be any of those combinations. We have seen Amorim using a fullback on both sides. We have seen that on numerous occasions. We've also seen a proper winger on both sides of the pitch. We've seen a fullback and a winger. We have seen all of these combinations. We've seen left-footers, but also right-footers on the left-hand side, and right-footers as well as left-footers on the right-hand side of the pitch. The profile of wingback isn't actually too important for Amorim. He will work with what he's got. Rather than having this fixed idea of what he has to do and then forcing players into the system, he will pick the roles that suit the Manchester United players. So if he feels that he's got a fullback that is ideal to play this sort of role, that fullback will absolutely come into the team and play a role which suits them. However, if he feels that United have wingers that are more suited to this, then we will see that as well. Currently, I'm leaning towards an idea of Dalot potentially playing left wing back and Anthony playing right wing back. I want to do a more in-depth video on this position in a few days' time, but that's kind of where I'm sitting at for now. In terms of their role, no matter the profile, these players have a lot of work to do. Physically, they are at times defensively in a back five, but also at times really involved in the high press. In terms of on the ball, they have to get forward, they have to provide the width for the team. So this is a very tricky position. This is a position that Amorim will want to get right with his profiling. He's done it every time he's kind of put a new player in that position so far, so I trust him in this area. It just might take a bit of time, but if he gets it right, the wing-backs will be huge. They will be massively beneficial for Manchester United on the ball, but also off the ball. It's just going to take a bit of time, but the profiles, he's flexible. Amorim is also somewhat flexible with the next position as well, and that is those inside forward positions. I think everyone is of the opinion that these players have to be half-space players, players that are phenomenal in tight spaces. And largely, I would agree. Typically, he has put that sort of player in these two positions. Players that can receive the ball between the lines, they have a good burst over the first 3 yards, carrying the ball, gliding past an opponent into these tighter spaces. That is typically what Ruben Amorim would go for. He then also wants creativity from these positions as well. And I think when we look at the Manchester United squad, we don't really have players that necessarily scream out to you, apart from perhaps Amad Diallo and Mason Mount. In terms of the others, it's a little bit more uncertain. However, I am here to save the day for certain Manchester United players because once again, Amorim is flexible. Typically, yes, he probably does want more creative half-space players, but he has adapted in the past. This season we have seen a young man called Konrad Harder, who is very much an intense, running, physical striker, realistically, playing one of these 10 positions. He's been situated a little bit higher up the pitch, a little bit closer to the striker, whilst the right side forward is given a bit more license to be a bit more creative. So again, Amorim is flexible. People talk about Marcus Rashford. Is there a role for him in this team? Perhaps not as a traditional number 10. But again, Amorim is flexible. Konrad Harder is the perfect example, playing on the last line despite being one of the inside forwards. So again, do I think Manchester United have it perfect straight away? No. Do I think it's going to take time? Yes. It's going to take a lot of time to get these roles, these ideas, these movements, these patterns right. It's going to take a lot of time. But again, Amorim is flexible. He isn't a manager who forces players to play certain roles. He will adapt the roles to suit the players. And that's why I like this idea so much. So I wouldn't worry too much about the inside forwards. It's not going to be perfect straight away, but given a bit of time, he'll find the solutions. And then finally, we have the striker position, and this is probably one of the most simple positions of the lot. Amorim typically likes a striker that can get in behind, that can run the channels and move the opposition's defence about, spinning into the left channel to get shots off, but also the right channel as well, occupying defenders, dragging players out of position to then try and create room for someone else to move into. On top of that, he also likes a striker that is pretty good with his hold-up play. We've spoken about already how the goalkeeper can be quite direct at times. You therefore need a striker that can hold that ball up. I think Rasmus Højlund is the option that ticks the boxes the most at the moment. Is he perfect with this hold-up department? Probably not. I think he's improved this season. He needs to keep working on it. But in terms of those channel runs, getting in behind the opposition, stretching the pitch this way, I think Højlund is perfect. And I also think he's our most clinical player in the final third, perhaps apart from Marcus Rashford. But he's certainly right up there, and he is quite close in terms of his profile to Viktor Gyökeres, and I actually think he has higher potential. I think he's that good. He has the ability to explode under Ruben Amorim, because guess what? He creates chances for his strikers. The Amorim system is all about getting your striker into goal-scoring positions and creating goal-scoring opportunities. If Højlund can find his form and can continue to improve, he could blow up under Amorim and become a really special player. All in all, it's going to be really interesting under Amorim. Do I think Manchester United have the perfect players for each position? No. I think, roughly speaking, this is sort of what my starting 11 looks like at the moment under Amorim, but I think it's important to remember he will be adaptable. He will adapt his roles. He will change his roles to suit the players. If we don't have the ideal wing-back to fly forward on the overlap all the time, he will potentially play a slightly more defensive option. He will come up with solutions, but of course, that is going to take time, and that is a key message here. Be patient. This is very different to what Manchester United have been doing in the past, so it's going to take time. If given time, I'm quite confident it will work. I do believe in Amorim, and I do believe in this system. In terms of today's video, I think that's all I want to cover. If you want to see me going more in depth on any of these positions, particularly those wide areas, let me know in the comments down below. But apart from that, we are finished for today. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.